Picture this. You're standing in your backyard holding nothing but a smartphone with a dead battery trying to find your way to a grocery store 3 blocks away. Feels impossible, right? Now imagine being a tiny Arctic tern, weighing less than 4 ounces, and somehow knowing exactly how to fly from the Arctic all the way to Antarctica and back again. That's 44,000 miles of open ocean, shifting weather patterns, and 0 GPS signals. Yet these remarkable birds do it year after year with pinpoint accuracy that would make our best navigation systems weep with envy. Welcome to the most mind-bending mystery in the natural world: how millions of animals navigate across thousands of miles without a single map, compass, or navigation app. I'm talking about journeys so epic they make our greatest human adventures look like a stroll to the corner store. And the secret to how they do it? Well, that's about to blow your mind. Now, before we dive into this incredible world of animal navigation, I want you to know that what you're about to discover isn't just fascinating trivia. This is cutting-edge science that's revolutionizing how we understand animal intelligence, Earth's magnetic field, and even inspiring new technologies that could change how we navigate our own world. We're talking about biological GPS systems that put our satellites to shame, internal compasses more precise than anything humans have ever built, and navigation abilities so extraordinary that scientists are still scratching their heads trying to figure them out. But here's what makes this even more incredible. Every single day, right now as you're listening to this, millions of animals are embarking on journeys that span continents and oceans. They're following invisible highways in the sky, underwater corridors that have existed for millennia, and magnetic pathways that crisscross our planet like a vast, hidden network. And they're doing it all with navigation systems built right into their bodies. I've spent months diving deep into the latest research, talking to the world's leading migration scientists, and uncovering discoveries that are so recent they're still sending shockwaves through the scientific community. What I found will completely change how you think about the animals around us and the incredible planet we all call home. So, whether you're someone who gets lost driving to familiar places, or you're fascinated by the mysteries of animal behavior, or you just love discovering the hidden wonders of our natural world, this journey is going to take you places you never imagined. We're about to explore navigation systems that make our most advanced technology look primitive, witness journeys that span the globe, and uncover secrets that animals have been keeping for millions of years. Let's start with a story that sounds absolutely impossible, but I promise you it's completely true. Every year, something extraordinary happens in the waters off the coast of Australia. A baby sea turtle, no bigger than your palm, hatches from an egg buried in the sand. This tiny creature has never seen the ocean before. It has no parents to guide it, no older turtles to follow, and certainly no marine biology textbook to consult. Yet within minutes of breaking free from its shell, this hatchling will begin one of the most remarkable journeys in the animal kingdom. This little turtle will somehow know to head directly for the ocean, dive beneath the waves, and begin a voyage that will take it thousands of miles across the Pacific. It will navigate ocean currents, avoid predators, find food in the vast blue wilderness, and somehow, against all odds, find its way to feeding grounds it has never seen before. Then, after years at sea, it will return to the exact same beach where it was born to lay eggs of its own. How is this possible? How can an animal with a brain the size of a marble navigate across an ocean with better accuracy than most humans can manage with GPS? The answer lies in one of nature's most sophisticated navigation systems, and it's been hiding in plain sight for millions of years. But sea turtles are just the beginning of this story. They're part of an incredible cast of animal navigators that includes creatures so skilled at finding their way around our planet that they put our best explorers to shame. We're talking about butterflies that weigh less than a paperclip but somehow navigate 3,000 miles across North America. Birds that can fly for days without stopping and still land exactly where they intended. whales that traverse entire ocean basins following routes passed down through generations, and salmon that can find their way back to the exact stream where they were born after years wandering the open ocean. These aren't just lucky guesses or random wandering. These animals are using sophisticated navigation techniques that scientists are only now beginning to understand. They're reading clues from the Earth's magnetic field, following star patterns, sensing polarized light, detecting infrasound waves, and using dozens of other navigation methods that most of us didn't even know existed. And here's what makes this story even more incredible. Many of these animals are making their first migration as juveniles, with no experienced adults to show them the way. Somehow, they're born with detailed maps already programmed into their minds. It's as if they come equipped with internal GPS systems that know not just where they are, but where they need to go, and exactly how to get there. Take the Arctic tern I mentioned earlier. These remarkable seabirds experience more daylight than any other animal on Earth because they follow an endless summer, migrating from Arctic to Antarctic and back again every year. That's like flying from New York to Sydney and back, twice, every single year of their lives. And they do it with such precision that they follow the same routes generation after generation, hitting the same stopover points, timing their arrival to coincide with peak food availability. Or consider the bar-tailed godwit, a shorebird that holds the record for the longest non-stop flight of any bird. These incredible animals fly from Alaska to New Zealand without stopping once. We're talking about a 7,000-mile journey over open ocean, with no landmarks to guide them, no place to rest, and no room for error. One wrong turn, and they're flying into empty ocean, with no hope of survival. Yet they make this journey with such accuracy that scientists can predict almost exactly where they'll make landfall. Then there are the monarch butterflies, perhaps the most famous migrators of all. These delicate insects undertake a journey that spans multiple generations. The butterflies that begin the migration in Canada will never complete it themselves. Instead, their great-great-grandchildren will finish the journey, somehow knowing exactly where their ancestors were headed despite having never made the trip before. It's like a relay race where each runner knows the route by heart, even though they've never run it. But here's where the story gets really wild. Scientists have discovered that animals aren't just using one navigation method, they're using multiple systems simultaneously, cross-referencing different sources of information to create incredibly accurate positioning data. They're like natural-born navigation experts with access to information sources we're only beginning to understand. Some animals can sense the Earth's magnetic field and use it like a built-in compass. Others can detect polarized light patterns in the sky that are invisible to human eyes. Many use celestial navigation, reading the positions of stars and the sun with extraordinary precision. Some can even detect infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that travel vast distances through the atmosphere and ocean, giving them information about weather systems, geographical features, and even other animals hundreds of miles away. And perhaps most remarkably of all, many of these navigation systems work together in ways that create redundancy and accuracy that surpasses anything humans have ever built. If one system fails, they have backups. If weather obscures their celestial cues, they can switch to magnetic navigation. If magnetic storms disrupt their compass, they can fall back on landmark recognition or olfactory cues. It's like they're carrying a Swiss Army knife of navigation tools, each one perfectly adapted to different situations and environments. And they're using all of these tools simultaneously, constantly cross-checking their position and adjusting their course with a precision that would make air traffic controllers jealous. But perhaps the most mind-blowing part of this story is that we're still discovering new navigation methods. Just in the past few years, scientists have found evidence that some animals might be using quantum mechanics for navigation. Yes, you heard that right. Quantum mechanics. There's growing evidence that some birds might have quantum compasses in their eyes that allow them to literally see magnetic fields. as patterns of light and shadow. Other recent discoveries have shown that some animals might be using gravitational cues, detecting minute variations in the Earth's gravitational field to help determine their position. Still others might be reading chemical gradients in the air and water, following scent trails that stretch across continents and oceans. The more we learn about animal navigation, the more we realize how much we still don't know. These creatures are using sensory abilities and information processing techniques that we're only beginning to understand, and they're doing it with brains that are often smaller than our fingernails. It makes you wonder, what else are animals capable of that we haven't discovered yet? What other hidden abilities are they using to survive and thrive in ways that continue to amaze us? And perhaps most intriguingly, what can we learn from these natural navigation masters that might help us better understand our own planet and our place on it? These are the questions that drive scientists around the world to study animal migration with ever more sophisticated tools and techniques. They're using satellite tracking to follow animals on their journeys, genetic analysis to understand how navigation abilities are inherited, and laboratory experiments to test how different environmental cues affect animal behavior. And what they're discovering is rewriting our understanding of animal intelligence, sensory biology, and the hidden information networks that surround us every day. We're learning that our planet is crisscrossed with invisible highways that animals have been using for millions of years. Information superhighways encoded in magnetic fields, chemical gradients, sound waves, and light patterns that create a navigation network of breathtaking complexity and elegance. But this isn't just an academic curiosity. Understanding how animals navigate is leading to practical applications that could revolutionize human technology. Scientists are developing new navigation systems inspired by animal abilities, creating sensors that can detect magnetic fields with biological precision, and even exploring whether quantum navigation principles could enhance our own GPS systems. The secrets of animal migration aren't just helping us understand the natural world better, they're inspiring innovations that could help us navigate our own world more effectively. And that's just the beginning of what we'll discover as we continue to unlock the mysteries of how animals find their way across our planet without ever getting lost. Now, imagine trying to explain to someone how you know which direction is north. You might mention a compass, or perhaps you'd look for the North Star. But what if I told you there are animals walking around right now with biological compasses built directly into their bodies? Compasses so sensitive they can detect magnetic field variations that our most sophisticated instruments struggle to measure? This is where our story takes a turn into territory that sounds like science fiction, but is absolutely mind-blowingly real. Deep inside the cells of migrating animals, scientists have discovered tiny crystals of magnetite, the same mineral found in compass needles. These microscopic biological compasses are connected to nerve pathways that feed directly into the animal's brain, creating a sense we don't even have a word for in human language. But here's where it gets even more extraordinary. These aren't just simple compasses pointing north. They're three-dimensional navigation systems that can detect not only the direction of magnetic north, but also the intensity and inclination of magnetic field lines. This gives animals information about their latitude, their proximity to magnetic anomalies, and even helps them create detailed mental maps of the magnetic landscape around them. Think about that for a moment. While we're fumbling with our phones, trying to figure out which way we're facing on a map, a sea turtle swimming in the middle of the Pacific Ocean knows exactly where it is because it can feel the Earth's magnetic field like we feel wind on our skin. It's experiencing our planet's magnetism as a constant, reliable source of positional information that never goes offline, never needs updates, and never runs out of battery. And the precision is absolutely staggering. Scientists tracking loggerhead sea turtles have found that these animals can detect magnetic field variations equivalent to moving just a few miles along their migration route. They're reading the Earth's magnetic signature like a detailed roadmap, following magnetic highways that have been stable for thousands of years. But magnetic navigation is just one tool in their incredible toolkit. Let's talk about something even more remarkable: How animals use the sky itself as a navigation system that puts our most advanced astronomical equipment to shame. Every clear night, billions of animals look up and see something we've almost forgotten how to read, the star compass. But they're not just looking at a few bright stars and making rough guesses about direction. They're reading the entire celestial sphere like a master navigator with decades of training, extracting positional information from star patterns, the movement of constellations, and even the subtle polarization of moonlight. Migratory birds, for instance, don't just use a single star as a reference point. They're reading the entire rotating pattern of the night sky, understanding how different constellations wheel overhead throughout the night and across seasons. They can determine their geographic position by observing which stars are directly overhead, how high certain constellations appear above the horizon, and how the celestial sphere rotates relative to their position on Earth. And here's something that will absolutely blow your mind. Many of these animals are doing celestial navigation calculations that would require us to use complex mathematical formulas and reference tables. They're performing spherical trigonometry in their heads, calculating their position based on the angles between celestial objects and their local horizon. It's like they have built-in sextants and astronomical computers working together seamlessly. But wait, it gets better. During the day, when stars aren't visible, many animals switch to solar navigation with precision that rivals our best chronometers. They're not just noting that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. They're tracking the sun's precise arc across the sky, compensating for seasonal changes in the sun's path, and using their internal biological clocks to determine their longitude based on the sun's position at any given time of day. This is navigation at a level that human sailors didn't achieve until we developed accurate timepieces and detailed astronomical tables. Yet a tiny warbler weighing less than half an ounce is doing these calculations instinctively while flying hundreds of miles without stopping. And if celestial navigation wasn't impressive enough, many animals have developed the ability to see something completely invisible to human eyes: polarized light patterns in the sky. Even on cloudy days when the sun isn't visible, these animals can detect the polarization patterns created by sunlight scattering through the atmosphere. It's like having X-ray vision that reveals a hidden compass rose-painted across the entire sky. The polarization patterns form a consistent, predictable grid that animals can use to determine direction even when all other visual cues are obscured. It's a backup navigation system that works in almost any weather condition, providing reliable directional information when magnetic or celestial cues might be compromised. But perhaps the most mind-bending discovery in recent years involves something called quantum navigation. Scientists have found evidence that some birds might have quantum compasses built right into their eyes. These biological quantum sensors might allow them to literally see magnetic field lines as patterns of light and shadow overlaid on their normal vision. This isn't speculation or science fiction. This is cutting-edge research happening right now in laboratories around the world. The evidence suggests that certain proteins in bird retinas might be sensitive to quantum entanglement effects created by Earth's magnetic field. When photons hit these proteins, they create pairs of quantum-entangled particles whose behavior is influenced by magnetic fields, potentially allowing birds to see magnetism as a visual overlay on their normal sight. Imagine looking out your window and seeing not just trees and buildings, but also glowing lines showing you exactly which direction is north, south, east, and west. That might be closer to what some migrating birds experience than we ever realized. And we're still discovering new sensory abilities that seem to come straight out of a superhero comic book. Some animals can detect infrasound, sound waves with frequencies too low for humans to hear, that travel vast distances through the atmosphere. These infrasonic waves are created by ocean waves, mountain ranges, storms, and even earthquakes, giving animals information about geographical features and weather patterns hundreds or even thousands of miles away. Pigeons, for instance, might be able to hear the infrasonic signature of distant mountain ranges, giving them acoustic landmarks that help them navigate even when flying over unfamiliar territory. It's like having sonar that works across continents, providing a sound-based map of the landscape that extends far beyond what their eyes can see. Other animals use their sense of smell in ways that redefine what we thought was possible. Salmon returning to their natal streams aren't just following a general scent trail, they're reading a chemical signature so specific that they can identify the exact tributary where they were born among thousands of similar waterways. Their olfactory navigation system can distinguish between chemical gradients that differ by parts per billion, creating scent-based maps with resolution that makes our chemical sensors look primitive. And then there are the social navigators, animals that pass down migration routes through cultural learning that spans generations. Some whale populations follow migration corridors that have been used for thousands of years, with older, experienced individuals serving as living libraries of navigational knowledge. These matriarchal societies maintain oral traditions, if you will, of optimal routes, feeding areas, and safe passageways that get passed down from mothers to daughters across centuries. What's particularly fascinating is how these different navigation systems work together in ways that create redundancy and accuracy that surpasses anything humans have engineered. A migrating bird isn't using just magnetic navigation, or just celestial navigation, or just polarized light detection. It's using all of these systems simultaneously, constantly cross-referencing different sources of information to maintain pinpoint accuracy, even when some systems are compromised. It's like having multiple GPS systems, a magnetic compass, a star chart, weather radar, and a detailed roadmap all working together in perfect harmony. If one system gives conflicting information, the others provide backup. If weather conditions interfere with one navigation method, alternative systems seamlessly take over. This multi-layered approach to navigation creates a level of reliability and precision that engineers can only dream of achieving. These animals have built-in redundancy systems that ensure they can find their way home even when facing equipment failures that would strand human navigators completely. And the more we study these natural navigation systems, the more we realize that animals aren't just following simple programmed routes. They're making complex decisions, adapting to changing conditions, taking shortcuts when opportunities arise, and even discovering new routes that subsequent generations will adopt. This is navigation with intelligence, creativity, and adaptability built right in. It's not just biological GPS. It's biological GPS with artificial intelligence capabilities that can learn, adapt, and improve over time. The implications of all this are staggering when you really think about it. We're not just talking about animals that have good instincts or lucky guesses. We're talking about biological navigation systems that are so sophisticated, they're inspiring entirely new fields of scientific research. Engineers are studying bird brains to develop better autopilot systems. Computer scientists are modeling ant colony navigation to create more efficient routing algorithms. And material scientists are trying to recreate the magnetic sensors found in animal cells to build next-generation compass technology. But here's what really keeps me up at night thinking about this stuff. If animals have access to all these incredible navigation systems that we're only now discovering, what else are they sensing that we have absolutely no clue about? What other information highways are crisscrossing our planet that we're completely blind to? Recent research suggests we might just be scratching the surface. Scientists have found evidence that some animals might be detecting gravitational anomalies, reading atmospheric pressure changes that forecast weather days in advance, or even sensing electromagnetic radiation from solar activity. There's a growing body of evidence suggesting that animals might have early warning systems for earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and severe weather events that put our most advanced monitoring equipment to shame. Think about the implications here. We live on a planet that's constantly broadcasting information through magnetic fields, gravitational variations, chemical gradients, sound waves, light patterns, and dozens of other signals we haven't even identified yet. And while we're walking around largely oblivious to most of this information, animals are reading it like an open book, extracting navigation data, weather forecasts, and environmental intelligence that helps them make life or death decisions every single day. It's humbling, honestly. Here we are with our satellites and supercomputers and GPS networks, and a tiny songbird with a brain the size of a pea is out navigating us using sensory abilities we didn't even know existed until recently. These animals are living in a sensory-rich world that's largely invisible to us, picking up information from sources we can't detect and processing it in ways we're only beginning to understand. And the precision, the absolute precision of these natural navigation systems is what really blows me away. We're not talking about animals that get roughly close to where they need to go. We're talking about pinpoint accuracy that would make a military targeting system jealous. Take the wandering albatross, for instance. These magnificent seabirds spend most of their lives flying over the open ocean, covering thousands of miles without ever seeing land. Yet when it's time to breed, they return to the exact same island where they were born, often landing within meters of the nest site they used the previous year. They're navigating across vast expanses of seemingly identical ocean to hit a target that's essentially a speck of rock in an endless blue wilderness. Or consider the Pacific salmon that spend years roaming throughout the North Pacific, traveling thousands of miles through ocean currents and feeding areas, only to return to the precise stream, sometimes the exact gravel bed, where they hatched years earlier. They're not just finding their way back to the general area, they're homing in on specific locations with accuracy that GPS systems would struggle to match. And here's something that will really mess with your head. Many of these incredible navigation feats are being performed by animals making their very first migration. No practice runs, no experienced guides, no trial and error learning period. They're born with navigation systems that are already perfectly calibrated and ready to guide them across continents and oceans. It's like being handed the keys to a Ferrari and somehow instinctively knowing not just how to drive it, but how to navigate the Monaco Grand Prix course at full speed, in the dark, during your first time behind the wheel. Except instead of a race car, it's a biological navigation system more sophisticated than anything humans have ever built. And instead of a racetrack, it's the entire planet. Scientists call this innate navigation ability programmed migration, but that term doesn't really capture the mind-bending complexity of what's actually happening. These animals aren't just following simple, hardwired instructions. They're born with incredibly sophisticated internal maps that contain detailed information about magnetic field variations, celestial patterns, geographical landmarks, ocean currents, wind patterns, and seasonal timing. It's like they come equipped with a biological atlas that includes not just where they need to go, but when they need to leave, which routes to take, where to stop for food and rest, how to adjust for weather conditions, and even backup plans for when things go wrong. And all of this information is somehow encoded in their genetics and activated when they reach the appropriate age and environmental conditions. But how is this possible? How can genetic code contain detailed navigation instructions for journeys spanning thousands of miles? This is where the story gets into territory that challenges everything we thought we knew about genetics, inheritance, and animal intelligence. Recent research in epigenetics suggests that environmental information might be passed down through generations in ways that go far beyond traditional genetic inheritance. There's growing evidence that animals might inherit not just physical traits, but also learned behaviors, environmental memories, and even specific route information from their ancestors. It's like having access to a family library that contains not just your parents' experiences, but generations of accumulated knowledge about migration routes, feeding areas, weather patterns, and navigational techniques. This genetic memory system might allow animals to inherit incredibly detailed information about their environment without having to learn it through personal experience. And the timing mechanisms, the biological clocks that tell animals when to begin their migrations, are equally mind-blowing. These aren't just simple seasonal timers that go off when the weather changes. They're incredibly sophisticated chronometers that can track not just daily and seasonal cycles, but also lunar phases, solar cycles, and even longer astronomical patterns. Some animals time their migrations to coincide with specific moon phases that affect tidal patterns and food availability. Others synchronize their journeys with solar cycles that influence magnetic field fluctuations. Still, others seem to be tracking astronomical events that repeat on cycles spanning multiple years, timing their movements to take advantage of optimal conditions that only occur at specific intervals. It's like they have internal calendars that are tracking multiple overlapping cycles simultaneously, calculating the optimal timing for migration based on a complex analysis of astronomical, environmental, and biological factors. They're performing chronometric calculations that would require us to use atomic clocks and sophisticated computer algorithms. And perhaps most remarkably, these timing systems often work in coordination with the navigation systems we discussed earlier, creating integrated guidance systems that provide both directional and temporal information. Animals don't just know where to go, they know exactly when to go to arrive at optimal conditions for feeding, breeding, or avoiding harsh weather. This integration of timing and navigation creates migration strategies that are almost impossibly precise. Animals are launching their journeys at exactly the right moment to catch favorable wind currents, arrive during peak food abundance, avoid severe weather systems, and coordinate with potential mates who are traveling from completely different starting points. It's like having a travel planning system that can optimize complex multivariable equations involving weather forecasting, resource availability, timing coordination, and route efficiency, all while accounting for variables that change over time and distance. And they're doing this with biological computers that operate on glucose and weigh less than a paperclip. The more we study these systems, the more we realize that animal migration isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's about optimizing survival and reproductive success through incredibly sophisticated decision-making processes that account for dozens of environmental variables simultaneously. Animals are constantly making navigation decisions based on real-time environmental data, adjusting their routes to take advantage of favorable conditions, avoid dangerous areas, and maximize their chances of survival. They're not just following predetermined paths, they're actively navigating based on current conditions while maintaining awareness of their long-term destination goals. This dynamic navigation ability allows animals to adapt their migration strategies to changing environmental conditions, climate variations, and even human-induced landscape changes. They can discover new routes when traditional pathways become unavailable, find alternative food sources when usual stops are compromised, and even adjust their timing to account for shifting seasonal patterns. It's navigation with built-in artificial intelligence capabilities that can learn, adapt, and evolve over time. And these systems are being passed down through generations, creating navigation traditions that span centuries while remaining flexible enough to adapt to changing conditions. But here's where the story takes another incredible turn. Scientists are discovering that these amazing navigation abilities aren't limited to long-distance migrants. Even animals that live in relatively small areas are using sophisticated navigation systems that reveal hidden complexity in what we thought were simple behaviors. Honeybees, for instance, don't just fly randomly from flower to flower, hoping to stumble across nectar sources. They're creating detailed mental maps of their territory, calculating optimal foraging routes, and communicating location information to other bees with precision that would impress a GPS technician. Their famous waggle dance isn't just a cute behavior, it's a sophisticated data transmission system that conveys distance, direction, and quality information about food sources located miles from the hive. Desert ants navigate across seemingly featureless landscapes using visual landmarks, path integration, and polarized light patterns to create navigation systems that allow them to forage efficiently and return home with pinpoint accuracy. They're essentially doing dead reckoning navigation while accounting for environmental variables and maintaining awareness of their starting location throughout their entire journey. Even domestic cats are using navigation abilities that put our smartphone maps to shame. They're creating detailed territorial maps based on scent markers, visual landmarks, acoustic signatures, and spatial relationships that allow them to navigate complex environments with confidence and precision. The point is, sophisticated navigation isn't just a special ability reserved for long-distance migrants. It's a fundamental biological capability that's been refined and specialized across millions of species to meet specific environmental challenges. Every animal that moves through space is using some form of navigation system, and many of these systems are far more sophisticated than we ever imagined. And this brings us to one of the most exciting frontiers in animal navigation research, understanding how these biological systems might inspire new technologies that could revolutionize human navigation and transportation. Engineers are studying bird flight patterns to develop more efficient aircraft designs. Computer scientists are modeling ant colony navigation to create better traffic management systems. Materials scientists are trying to replicate biological magnetic sensors to build more sensitive compass technology. And roboticists are incorporating animal navigation principles into autonomous vehicles that can navigate without GPS signals. We're entering an era where biological navigation research isn't just helping us understand animals better, it's driving technological innovations that could change how humans interact with our environment. The secrets that animals have been keeping for millions of years are finally being unlocked, and they're revealing possibilities we never knew existed. But perhaps the most profound implication of all this research is what it tells us about the intelligence and sophistication of the animal kingdom. We're not just talking about creatures with good instincts or lucky survival strategies. We're talking about biological systems with computational capabilities that rival our most advanced technologies, sensory abilities that exceed our best instruments, and information processing skills that put our artificial intelligence systems to shame. These animals are living proof that intelligence comes in forms we're only beginning to understand, that consciousness might be far more widespread in the natural world than we ever imagined, and that the planet we live on is filled with navigation networks and information systems that we're just starting to discover. Every migration season, millions of animals are embarking on journeys that represent some of the most remarkable feats of navigation, endurance, and survival on our planet. And they're doing it using biological technologies that we're only now learning to appreciate and understand. The sheer scale of these journeys is something that's hard to wrap your head around until you really start looking at the numbers. We're not talking about weekend road trips or vacation flights. We're talking about endurance feats that would make Olympic athletes quit their day jobs and take up knitting instead. Consider the ruby-throated hummingbird, a bird so small it weighs about as much as a penny. Every fall, these tiny aerial acrobats fly non-stop across the Gulf of Mexico. That's 500 miles of open water with no place to land, no gas stations, no rest stops. Just 18 hours of continuous flight powered by nothing but the fat reserves they've built up beforehand. For perspective, that's like you or me running a marathon while carrying a backpack full of textbooks, except instead of 26 miles, it's 500 miles, and instead of solid ground beneath your feet, it's churning ocean waves as far as the eye can see. But even that pales in comparison to what bar-tailed godwits accomplish. These remarkable shorebirds hold the current world record for non-stop flight, and when I tell you the numbers, you're going to think I made a typo. They fly from Alaska to New Zealand without stopping once. Not for food, not for water, not for a bathroom break. 7,000 miles of continuous flight over the Pacific Ocean. That journey takes them 8 to 9 days of non-stop flying, during which they burn through nearly half their body weight in fat reserves. To put that in perspective, Imagine driving from New York to Los Angeles, then turning around and driving back to Denver, all without stopping for gas, food, or sleep. Except you're doing it while flying through the air at 40 miles per hour, navigating by instinct alone, with no margin for error, because there's literally nowhere to land if something goes wrong. And here's what makes this even more incredible. These birds don't just complete this journey once. They do it twice a year, every year, for their entire adult lives. Some godwits make this epic flight more than 20 times over their lifetime. That's nearly 300,000 miles of non-stop ocean crossings. To put that in perspective, that's more than the distance from Earth to the Moon and back again. But distance and endurance are just part of the story. The precision required for these journeys is what really makes your brain start to hurt when you think about it. Remember, these animals aren't just trying to get to the general area where they want to go. They need to hit very specific targets with incredible accuracy, often after flying for days or weeks without any visual landmarks. Take the Arctic terns we talked about earlier. Their migration isn't just about flying from one end of the Earth to the other. They're timing their arrival at specific locations to coincide with peak food availability, optimal breeding conditions, and favorable weather patterns. They're essentially running a complex logistical operation that would make Amazon's delivery network look simple by comparison. These birds leave their Arctic breeding grounds just as the brief summer is ending, follow a route that takes them down the Atlantic coastlines, across to Europe, then down the coast of Africa, timing their journey so they arrive in Antarctica just as the austral summer is beginning. Then, 6 months later, they reverse the entire process, following a slightly different route back north to arrive at their breeding grounds, just as the Arctic ice is breaking up and food becomes abundant. The timing has to be absolutely perfect. Arrive too early and the food isn't available yet. Arrive too late and the breeding season is over or the best nesting sites are taken. Yet somehow, these birds manage to synchronize their internal calendars with seasonal changes happening on the opposite side of the planet, coordinating their movements with astronomical cycles and environmental conditions they haven't experienced yet. It's like trying to plan a dinner party where all the guests are starting from different cities around the world, traveling by different methods, and need to arrive at exactly the right moment, except the dinner party location changes every year, and you don't have cell phones to coordinate with each other. And speaking of coordination, let me tell you about one of the most mind-bending aspects of animal migration. How animals that have never made a particular journey before somehow know exactly where they're supposed to go. We're not talking about learned behavior passed down from parents to offspring. We're talking about first-time migrants, often juveniles traveling alone, who navigate to destinations they've never seen with accuracy that would make a cruise missile jealous. European cuckoos provide one of the most striking examples of this phenomenon. Adult cuckoos are what scientists politely call brood parasites, which is a fancy way of saying they lay their eggs in other birds' nests and then basically ghost their own offspring. The baby cuckoos are raised by completely different species, never meet their biological parents, and have no contact with other cuckoos during their development. Yet when migration season arrives, these young cuckoos somehow know exactly when to leave, which direction to fly, and where to go. They navigate solo from Europe to Africa, following routes they've never traveled, to wintering grounds they've never seen, with no guidance from experienced adults. It's like being adopted as a baby, raised by wolves, and then somehow instinctively knowing how to drive to your biological grandparents' house for Thanksgiving, except the house is in a different country, and you've never owned a car. The precision of these solo journeys is absolutely staggering. Scientists have tracked young cuckoos making their first migration and found that they follow incredibly specific routes, hitting the same stopover points, following the same geographical features, and arriving at the same destinations as adults who have made the journey dozens of times. This phenomenon, called programmed migration, raises questions that challenge everything we thought we knew about genetics, learning, and animal intelligence. How can genetic code contain detailed navigation instructions for journeys spanning thousands of miles? How can an animal be born with an internal map that includes not just destinations, but optimal routes, timing information, and even backup plans for when things go wrong? The answer seems to lie in what scientists are discovering about the incredible sophistication of genetic inheritance. We're learning that animals don't just inherit physical traits like eye color or wing shape. They're also inheriting behavioral programs, environmental memories, and incredibly detailed information about their world that gets passed down through generations like a biological hard drive. But here's where it gets really wild. This inherited navigation information isn't just static data. It's dynamic, adaptive programming that can respond to changing conditions and incorporate new information. Animals aren't just following predetermined routes like biological robots. They're making complex decisions, adapting to environmental changes, and even discovering new pathways that subsequent generations will adopt. Scientists studying monarch butterflies have documented cases where populations have established entirely new migration routes in response to habitat changes or climate shifts. These new routes get incorporated into the population's genetic memory and passed down to future generations, creating navigation traditions that can persist for decades or even centuries. It's like having a GPS system that not only knows where you want to go, but can also learn from traffic patterns, road closures, and changing conditions to continuously optimize your route. Then share that information with your children and grandchildren so they benefit from your experience even after you're gone. And the learning doesn't stop there. Many migrating animals are also capable of cultural learning, where experienced individuals pass down knowledge to younger members of their group through direct interaction and observation. This creates migration traditions that combine genetic programming with learned behavior, resulting in navigation systems that are both incredibly stable and remarkably adaptable. Whooping cranes provide a fascinating example of this cultural learning in action. These magnificent birds nearly went extinct in the 1942nd, with only 15 individuals remaining in the wild. As part of recovery efforts, scientists had to teach young cranes their traditional migration routes by leading them with ultralight aircraft, essentially serving as surrogate parents for birds that had lost their cultural memory of where they were supposed to go. The young cranes learned the routes by following the aircraft, but then they began to optimize and modify those routes based on their own experience and environmental conditions. Within just a few generations, the cranes had established new migration traditions that combined the basic route structure they learned from humans with improvements they discovered through their own navigation experience. This ability to combine inherited programming with learned behavior and real-time decision-making creates navigation systems that are almost impossibly sophisticated. Animals are essentially running biological artificial intelligence systems that can process multiple data streams simultaneously, make complex calculations about optimal routes and timing, adapt to changing conditions, and even plan for contingencies that haven't happened yet. Think about what that means for a moment. A bird preparing for migration isn't just deciding to fly south for the winter. It's analyzing weather patterns, assessing its physical condition, evaluating food availability along potential routes, considering breeding cycle timing, monitoring magnetic field conditions, checking celestial navigation references, and probably processing dozens of other variables we don't even know about yet. Then it's using all of that information to calculate an optimal departure time, choose the best route from multiple possibilities, identify appropriate stopover locations, and even plan alternative strategies in case conditions change during the journey. It's like having a travel agent, meteorologist, navigator, and logistics coordinator all rolled into one, except they're all running on a brain that weighs less than a grape. And here's something that will really mess with your head. Many animals are making these complex navigation decisions while simultaneously dealing with all the other challenges of survival. They're not just focused on getting from point A to point B. They're also avoiding predators, finding food, maintaining their health, coordinating with mates or group members, and responding to unexpected environmental changes. It's like trying to plan a cross-country road trip while juggling, riding a unicycle, and solving calculus problems, all while being chased by people who want to eat you. The multitasking abilities required for successful migration are simply mind-boggling when you really think about what these animals are accomplishing. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about animal navigation is how it reveals the hidden information networks that surround us every day. We live in a world that's constantly broadcasting navigation data through magnetic fields, gravitational variations, chemical gradients, sound waves, light patterns, and electromagnetic radiation. Most of us walk through this information-rich environment completely oblivious to the signals that are surrounding us every moment of every day. Animals, on the other hand, are living in what we might call an augmented reality version of our world, where they can perceive and interpret information sources that are completely invisible to us. They're seeing magnetic field lines as visual patterns, hearing infrasonic weather reports from hundreds of miles away, smelling chemical trails that stretch across continents, and feeling gravitational variations that tell them about the landscape around them. It's like they're wearing high-tech sensory equipment that gives them access to information channels we didn't even know existed. And they're using all of this information not just for navigation, but for weather prediction, danger detection, resource location, and social communication. Recent research has shown that animals often have early warning systems for natural disasters that put our most sophisticated monitoring equipment to shame. Many species begin exhibiting unusual behavior days, or even weeks before earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, or severe weather events. They're apparently detecting precursor signals that our instruments miss, or that we haven't learned to interpret yet. Dogs and cats have been documented showing signs of distress before earthquakes that human seismologists didn't predict. Birds often alter their migration timing or routes to avoid severe storms that weather forecasters haven't identified yet. And there are countless historical accounts of animals evacuating areas days before tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, or other natural disasters. This suggests that animals aren't just using their navigation abilities to get from place to place. They're using their enhanced sensory capabilities to monitor environmental conditions continuously, creating early warning systems that help them avoid danger and optimize their survival strategies. It's like having access to a 24/7 environmental monitoring network that provides real-time updates on weather conditions, geological activity, magnetic field fluctuations, and dozens of other environmental variables. And this information network has been operating continuously for millions of years, long before humans developed weather satellites, seismometers, or magnetic field detectors. The implications of all this are staggering when you really sit down and think about them. We're sharing our planet with millions of species that have access to information sources we can barely detect, sensory abilities that exceed our best technology, and navigation systems that put our most advanced GPS networks to shame. And yet, despite all their incredible abilities, these animals are facing navigation challenges that didn't exist when their systems first evolved. Human activities are creating new obstacles that can interfere with natural navigation systems in ways we're only beginning to understand. Light pollution from cities can disrupt celestial navigation for nocturnal migrants. Radio transmissions and electromagnetic interference can interfere with magnetic navigation systems. Habitat destruction eliminates traditional stopover sites and creates gaps in migration corridors. Climate change is shifting seasonal timing and altering the environmental cues that animals rely on for navigation. It's like someone took a perfectly functioning navigation network that had been operating smoothly for millions of years and started randomly changing the signals, blocking some routes, and adding interference to the communication channels. Many animal populations are struggling to adapt to these rapid changes, and some species are experiencing navigation failures that are contributing to population declines and extinction risks. But here's the thing that gives me hope. The more we learn about animal navigation, the better we become at protecting and preserving these incredible systems. Scientists are working with urban planners to reduce light pollution during migration seasons. Engineers are designing communication systems that minimize electromagnetic interference with animal navigation. And conservationists are creating migration corridors that provide safe passage routes for traveling animals. We're also learning to use our understanding of animal navigation to improve our own technology and environmental monitoring systems. Researchers are developing new sensors inspired by animal magnetic detection systems. They're creating navigation algorithms based on how animals integrate multiple information sources. And they're even exploring whether biological navigation principles could be used to improve satellite navigation systems. But perhaps most importantly, studying animal navigation is teaching us to pay attention to the incredible complexity and sophistication of the natural world around us. Every time we discover a new navigation ability or sensory capability in animals, it reminds us how much we still don't know about the planet we live on and the creatures we share it with. These navigation systems represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement, creating biological technologies that are often more sophisticated than anything humans have engineered. They're proof that intelligence, problem-solving ability, and technological sophistication come in forms we're only beginning to understand and appreciate. And they're operating all around us every day, in ways that are usually invisible to human observation. Right now, as you're reading this, there are probably animals near you using navigation abilities that would amaze you if you could perceive what they're actually sensing and processing. That bird outside your window isn't just randomly hopping around looking for food. It's navigating using a sophisticated spatial memory system that includes detailed maps of food sources, territorial boundaries, predator locations, and escape routes. The dog walking down your street isn't just wandering aimlessly. It's reading a complex chemical information network that tells it about every other animal that has passed through the area recently. Even the insects in your garden are using navigation systems that put our smartphone maps to shame. They're creating mental maps of flower locations, calculating optimal foraging routes, and coordinating their activities with other members of their colonies using communication systems we're only beginning to decode. The natural world is filled with navigation technologies that are operating at a level of sophistication that challenges our understanding of what's possible with biological systems. And every new discovery in this field opens up questions that lead to even more amazing revelations about the incredible capabilities of the animals we share our planet with. But we're still just scratching the surface of what these systems can do and how they work. Every year brings new discoveries that reveal navigation abilities we never suspected, sensory capabilities that seem to defy physics, and information processing systems that rival our most advanced computers. The story of animal navigation is far from over. In fact, we may be entering the most exciting period of discovery in this field, as new technologies allow us to study these systems in ways that were impossible just a few years ago. We're tracking animals with unprecedented precision, monitoring their brain activity during navigation tasks, and even beginning to decode the neural algorithms that control their behavior. And what we're discovering is that the navigation abilities we've already documented may represent just a small fraction of what animals are actually capable of. There are probably dozens of navigation systems and sensory abilities that we haven't discovered yet, operating right under our noses in ways that are completely invisible to human observation. The animals around us are living in a sensory-rich world that's far more complex and information-dense than we ever imagined. They're reading environmental signals we can't detect, processing information in ways we don't understand, and making navigation decisions based on calculations that would challenge our most powerful computers. And they're doing it all with biological systems that are self-repairing, energy efficient, and capable of continuous operation for decades without maintenance or upgrades. It's technology that puts our best engineering achievements to shame, wrapped up in packages that often weigh less than a coin and require nothing but food and water to operate. The more we learn about these systems, the more we realize that we're surrounded by navigation technologies that represent some of the most sophisticated problem-solving systems on our planet. And they've been operating successfully for millions of years, continuously adapting and improving through natural selection and evolutionary refinement. These animals aren't just surviving in the natural world, they're thriving using navigation technologies that are so advanced we're still trying to figure out how they work. And every time we think we understand how they do it, we discover new layers of complexity that reveal even more sophisticated capabilities than we previously suspected. It's humbling, really, to realize that we share our planet with millions of species that have access to information sources we can't perceive, navigation abilities that exceed our technology, and problem-solving capabilities that rival our artificial intelligence systems. And most of the time, they're using these incredible abilities for tasks that seem completely routine from their perspective. A salmon returning to its natal stream isn't trying to impress anyone with its navigation skills. It's just going home. A bird migrating across continents isn't showing off its celestial navigation abilities. It's just following an internal program that tells it where it needs to be and when it needs to be there. But from our perspective, these routine behaviors represent some of the most remarkable technological achievements in the natural world. They're proof that biological systems can develop capabilities that far exceed what we thought was possible, and they're inspiring new technologies that could revolutionize how humans navigate and interact with our environment. The secrets of animal navigation are finally being unlocked, and they're revealing a world of possibilities we never knew existed. The technologies we're uncovering aren't just impressive from an engineering standpoint, they're revolutionizing our understanding of what consciousness and intelligence actually mean. When we watch a tiny warbler, weighing less than 4/4, successfully navigate from Canada to Central America using calculations that would require us to use advanced mathematics and multiple reference systems, we're forced to confront some pretty profound questions about the nature of intelligence itself. These aren't just programmed responses or simple instinctual behaviors. We're talking about dynamic problem-solving systems that can adapt to novel situations, make complex decisions under pressure, and even innovate new solutions when traditional methods fail. Animals are demonstrating forms of intelligence that operate on principles we're still trying to understand. Consider what happens when a migrating animal encounters unexpected obstacles. Maybe a storm system has moved into their usual flight path, or climate change has shifted the timing of seasonal food sources, or human development has eliminated a critical stopover site they've been using for generations. These animals don't just panic or give up, they adapt. Scientists have documented cases where entire populations have modified their migration routes within just a few generations to account for changing environmental conditions. They're essentially rewriting their genetic software in real time, updating their navigation programs based on new information, and passing those updates down to their offspring. It's like having a GPS system that doesn't just recalculate when you take a wrong turn, but actually learns from traffic patterns and road closures to permanently update its database for future users. Except instead of software engineers pushing updates to your device, it's happening through biological processes that we're only beginning to understand. And the speed at which some animals can process navigation information is absolutely mind-blowing. A bird flying at 40 miles per hour is covering nearly 60 feet every second. At that speed, it needs to be constantly updating its position, monitoring environmental conditions, scanning for obstacles and predators, and making course corrections based on multiple information streams simultaneously. The computational power required for this kind of real-time navigation processing is staggering. These animals are essentially running biological supercomputers that can handle massive amounts of sensory data, perform complex calculations, and execute split-second decisions while maintaining perfect coordination between their navigation systems and flight control mechanisms. And they're doing all of this while dealing with physical challenges that would overwhelm our best technology. They're navigating through turbulence that would crash our most advanced aircraft. They're maintaining course accuracy in crosswinds that would throw off our most precise guidance systems. They're operating in weather conditions that would shut down human transportation networks entirely. But here's what really gets me excited about this research. We're starting to discover that these incredible navigation abilities might not be as unique to long-distance migrants as we once thought. Recent studies are revealing that many animals we consider to be non-migratory are actually using incredibly sophisticated navigation systems for their daily activities. Take honeybees, for instance. These remarkable insects aren't just randomly buzzing from flower to flower, hoping to stumble across nectar. They're running complex optimization algorithms that would make logistics companies jealous. A single foraging bee is essentially solving what computer scientists call the traveling salesman problem in real time, calculating the most efficient route to visit multiple food sources while accounting for factors like distance, nectar quality, flight time, and energy expenditure. But it gets even more impressive. When a successful forager returns to the hive, it doesn't just dump off its nectar and head back out. It communicates the location of profitable food sources to other bees using one of the most sophisticated information transfer systems in the animal kingdom, the waggle dance. This isn't just pointing in a direction and saying food that way. The waggle dance is a precise data transmission system that conveys distance information through the duration of the dance, direction information through the angle of the dance relative to vertical, and quality information through the intensity and vigor of the movements. It's like having a GPS coordinate system combined with Yelp reviews, all encoded in a dance that lasts just a few seconds. And here's the kicker. Other bees watching this dance can decode all of this information and use it to fly directly to food sources they've never visited before. They're essentially downloading GPS coordinates and flight instructions from their colleagues, and then executing successful navigation missions based entirely on second-hand information. But the sophistication doesn't stop there. Honeybee colonies are constantly running multiple foraging operations simultaneously, with different groups of bees working different areas and sharing information about changing conditions. They're coordinating their activities to avoid overcrowding at popular food sources, redirecting their efforts when resources become depleted, and even scouting for new opportunities while maintaining their existing operations. It's like watching a distributed intelligence system where individual agents with limited capabilities combine their efforts to accomplish complex tasks that exceed what any single individual could achieve. And they're doing it all without centralized command and control, relying instead on local interactions and information sharing to coordinate their collective behavior. This kind of swarm intelligence is inspiring entirely new fields of research in computer science and robotics. Engineers are studying ant colonies, bee swarms, and bird flocks to develop algorithms for coordinating autonomous vehicles, optimizing supply chain logistics, and managing distributed computing systems. The principles that govern how animals navigate and coordinate their movements are leading to breakthroughs in everything from traffic management to space exploration. NASA is using swarm intelligence concepts to design missions where multiple spacecraft work together to explore distant planets. Transportation companies are applying animal navigation principles to optimize delivery routes and reduce fuel consumption. But perhaps the most exciting applications are in the field of biomimetic robotics, where engineers are trying to create artificial systems that can replicate the navigation abilities of living animals. Imagine having robots that can navigate like bees, using visual landmarks and path integration to explore unknown environments without relying on GPS signals or external guidance systems. Or consider the possibilities of autonomous vehicles that can navigate like migrating birds, using multiple sensory inputs and redundant systems to maintain course accuracy even when primary navigation systems fail. These bio-inspired technologies could revolutionize everything from search and rescue operations to planetary exploration. Scientists are also working on creating artificial magnetic sensors based on the biological magnetoreception systems found in migrating animals. These sensors could be far more sensitive and energy efficient than current magnetic detection technology, opening up new possibilities for navigation, geological surveying, and even medical imaging applications. The polarized light detection systems that animals use for navigation are inspiring new developments in optical sensors that could work in conditions where traditional cameras fail. These bio-inspired vision systems could be crucial for autonomous vehicles operating in fog, dust storms, or other low visibility conditions. And researchers are exploring whether the quantum navigation systems found in some animals could lead to entirely new forms of sensing and navigation technology. If we can understand how birds use quantum effects to see magnetic fields, we might be able to develop navigation systems that work at the quantum level, providing unprecedented accuracy and sensitivity. But beyond the technological applications, studying animal navigation is revealing fundamental insights about how complex systems can emerge from relatively simple components. The navigation abilities we've been discussing aren't controlled by massive centralized computer systems. They're emerging from networks of relatively simple neurons that work together to create incredibly sophisticated behaviors. This is teaching us new things about how intelligence and problem solving can arise from distributed processing systems. Instead of requiring massive computational power concentrated in a single location, animals are showing us how complex behaviors can emerge from many simple interactions working together in parallel. These insights are influencing how we think about artificial intelligence, computer architecture, and even human cognition. We're learning that intelligence doesn't necessarily require the kind of centralized, hierarchical processing systems that we typically associate with computers and human brains. Animals are demonstrating that sophisticated problem solving can emerge from decentralized networks where individual components have limited capabilities but work together to achieve complex goals. This is leading to new approaches in AI research that focus on emergent behaviors and distributed processing rather than traditional programming methods. And the more we study these systems, the more we realize that the boundaries between individual and collective intelligence are much more fluid than we previously thought. A migrating bird isn't just using its own navigation abilities to find its way. It's also drawing on information shared by other members of its species, inherited knowledge passed down through generations, and even environmental cues created by the collective behavior of other animals. This interconnected nature of animal navigation is revealing that intelligence in the natural world operates more like a network than like isolated individual minds. Animals are constantly sharing information, learning from each other's experiences, and building on the accumulated knowledge of their species. It's making us reconsider what we mean when we talk about intelligence and consciousness. Are these properties that exist only within individual brains, or are they emergent properties that arise from the interactions between multiple agents in complex systems? The animals we've been discussing are challenging our most basic assumptions about cognition, intelligence, and consciousness. They're demonstrating capabilities that we once thought required human-level intelligence, but they're doing it with biological systems that operate on completely different principles than human brains. And they're doing it in ways that often exceed human performance in specific domains. No human navigator, no matter how skilled or well-trained, can match the precision and reliability of a migrating bird's navigation system. No human pilot can match the energy efficiency and obstacle avoidance capabilities of a flying insect. These animals are proof that there are many different ways to solve complex problems, and that biological systems have evolved solutions that often surpass what we've achieved with our technology. They're living examples of alternative approaches to intelligence and problem solving that could inspire entirely new ways of thinking about computation, navigation, and artificial intelligence. But what really keeps me fascinated by this research is the realization that we're probably still missing huge pieces of the puzzle. Every time we think we understand how animal navigation works, We discover new sensory capabilities, new information processing methods, or new forms of environmental awareness that we never suspected existed. The animals around us are operating with sensory capabilities that we're only beginning to detect and understand. They're processing information in ways that challenge our understanding of what's possible with biological systems. And they're accomplishing feats of navigation and coordination that continue to amaze researchers who have been studying them for decades. Recent advances in tracking technology are allowing us to follow animals on their migrations with unprecedented detail, revealing behaviors and route choices that were completely invisible to previous generations of researchers. We're discovering that migration routes are far more complex and dynamic than we ever imagined, with animals making real-time decisions based on environmental conditions that we're still learning to measure and interpret. Satellite tracking systems are showing us that animals often take routes that seem inefficient from a human perspective, but turn out to be optimized for factors we hadn't considered. They might be following magnetic field lines that provide more reliable navigation references, or timing their movements to take advantage of wind patterns that occur at specific altitudes and times of day. Genetic sequencing technologies are revealing how navigation abilities are encoded in animal DNA and passed down through generations. We're discovering that the inheritance of navigation abilities is far more complex than simple genetic programming, involving epigenetic factors that can be influenced by environmental conditions and parental experiences. Neuroimaging technologies are allowing us to watch animal brains in action during navigation tasks, revealing the neural circuits and processes that control these behaviors. We're seeing how different brain regions work together to integrate sensory information, make navigation decisions, and coordinate movement patterns. And computational modeling is helping us understand how relatively simple neural networks can give rise to complex navigation behaviors. We're discovering that many of the sophisticated capabilities we've been discussing can emerge from surprisingly simple rules and interactions. But every new discovery seems to reveal even more complexity and sophistication than we previously suspected. The more we learn about animal navigation, the more questions we have about how these systems actually work and what other capabilities they might possess. We're realizing that animal navigation isn't just about getting from one place to another. It's about processing vast amounts of environmental information, making complex decisions under uncertainty, coordinating with other individuals, and adapting to changing conditions in real time. These are cognitive challenges that would strain our most advanced artificial intelligence systems. And the animals accomplishing these feats are doing so with biological systems that are self-maintaining, energy efficient, and capable of continuous operation for years or even decades. They're proof that there are forms of intelligence and problem-solving capability in the natural world that we're only beginning to understand and appreciate. The study of animal navigation is opening windows into forms of consciousness and intelligence that operate on principles completely different from human cognition. These animals are showing us that the universe of possible minds is far larger and more diverse than we ever imagined. And perhaps most importantly, they're reminding us that we share our planet with millions of species whose cognitive capabilities and sensory experiences are far richer and more sophisticated than we typically give them credit for. Every animal that successfully completes a migration is demonstrating problem-solving abilities that rival our best technology and decision-making skills that would challenge our most experienced navigators. The next time you see a bird flying overhead, or notice a butterfly in your garden, or watch ants marching across your sidewalk, remember that you're witnessing the operation of navigation systems that represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement. These animals are using biological technologies that we're still trying to understand, processing information from sources we can barely detect, and accomplishing feats of navigation that continue to inspire and amaze researchers around the world. The secrets of how animals navigate without maps are finally being revealed, and they're showing us a natural world that's far more sophisticated, interconnected, and remarkable than we ever dared to imagine. Every migration season brings new discoveries new insights, and new appreciation for the incredible capabilities of the animals we share our planet with. And we're still just at the beginning of understanding what these remarkable creatures are truly capable of accomplishing. And this brings us to one of the most mind-bending aspects of animal navigation that scientists are just beginning to unravel: the role of social networks in migration success. We tend to think of navigation as an individual skill, like learning to drive or read a map. But in the animal kingdom, navigation is often a collective endeavor that spans generations and involves complex information sharing systems that would make our social media networks look primitive. Consider the incredible story of how knowledge gets passed down through whale populations. Humpback whales don't just randomly wander the oceans hoping to stumble across good feeding areas. They follow ancient migration routes that have been used by their species for thousands of years, routes that are maintained and refined through what scientists call cultural transmission. Here's how it works. Older, experienced females serve as the navigational leaders for their pods, carrying detailed knowledge of feeding areas, breeding grounds, and optimal travel routes in their memories. These matriarchs have completed the migration dozens of times, accumulating decades of experience about ocean conditions, seasonal timing, and the location of resources. But they don't keep this knowledge to themselves. Through complex social interactions during the journey, they're constantly teaching younger whales about navigation techniques, route choices, and environmental cues. It's like having a master navigator taking apprentices on training voyages, except these training sessions happen while traveling thousands of miles through some of the most challenging marine environments on Earth. The really fascinating part is that this knowledge doesn't just flow from old to young within a single generation. It accumulates across multiple generations, creating navigation traditions that can persist for centuries. When environmental conditions change or new threats emerge, the collective knowledge of the population adapts, and those adaptations get incorporated into the cultural memory that's passed down to future generations. Scientists studying North Atlantic right whales have documented cases where populations have modified their traditional migration routes in response to shipping traffic, climate change, and shifting food sources. These route modifications aren't happening randomly or through trial and error. They're emerging through social learning processes where successful innovations get adopted by the group and incorporated into their navigational culture. It's like having a GPS system that continuously updates its database based on user feedback and collective experience, except instead of software updates pushed to devices, it's cultural knowledge transmitted through social interactions between whales who may live for over a century. But whales aren't the only animals using social networks for navigation. Many bird species employ what scientists call chain migration, where experienced adults guide juveniles on their first migration, teaching them the route through direct demonstration. These mentorship programs create navigation traditions that combine inherited genetic programming with learned cultural knowledge. Whooping cranes, those magnificent birds we mentioned earlier, provide one of the most dramatic examples of how social learning can preserve navigation knowledge. When the species nearly went extinct, conservationists had to reconstruct their migration routes by literally leading young cranes with ultralight aircraft, serving as surrogate parents to teach them where they needed to go. But here's what's remarkable. Once those hand-reared birds learned the routes, they began teaching them to their own offspring through natural social learning processes. Within just a few generations, the cranes had not only re-established their migration traditions, but had actually improved upon the routes they were originally taught, optimizing them based on their own experience and changing environmental conditions. This demonstrates something profound about how animal navigation systems work. They're not just following rigid, predetermined programs. They're dynamic, adaptive systems that can incorporate new information, learn from experience, and pass improvements down through generations. It's biological artificial intelligence with social networking capabilities built right in, and the sophistication of these social navigation networks extends far beyond simple route following. Many species have developed complex communication systems that allow them to share real-time information about environmental conditions, resource availability, and potential dangers during their migrations. Caribou herds, for instance, don't migrate as a uniform mass moving in the same direction. They're constantly communicating with each other about local conditions, coordinating their movements to avoid obstacles, and sharing information about food and water sources. Individual animals are making navigation decisions based not just on their own sensory input, but on information gathered and transmitted by hundreds or even thousands of other herd members. It's like having a crowdsourced navigation system where every participant is both a data collector and a data user, contributing information about local conditions while benefiting from the collective knowledge of the entire group. The navigation decisions made by the herd emerge from this constant information sharing, creating movement patterns that are optimized for the benefit of the entire population. But perhaps the most extraordinary example of social navigation occurs in species that migrate in large flocks or swarms. Starling murmurations, those mesmerizing aerial displays where thousands of birds move together like a single organism, aren't just beautiful to watch. They're demonstrations of collective navigation systems that can process information and make decisions faster than any individual bird could manage alone. Each bird in a murmuration is following simple rules about maintaining distance from its neighbors and responding to their movements. But when thousands of birds apply these rules simultaneously, something remarkable emerges. The flock begins to behave like a single, highly intelligent entity that can respond to threats, navigate around obstacles, and make complex movement decisions with reaction times that seem to defy physics. Scientists studying these flocks have discovered that information can propagate through a murmuration faster than any individual bird could fly. When birds on one edge of the flock detect a predator and begin an evasive maneuver, that information spreads through the entire group in wave-like patterns that travel at speeds approaching the theoretical limits of information transmission through biological networks. It's like watching a biological internet in action, where thousands of individual nodes are sharing information instantaneously to create collective responses that exceed what any single participant could accomplish alone. The navigation capabilities of these flocks emerge from the interactions between individuals, creating group intelligence that's far more sophisticated than the sum of its parts. And this principle of emergent collective intelligence appears throughout the animal kingdom. Ant colonies create navigation networks that span vast territories, with individual ants laying down chemical trails that get reinforced by successful foraging trips and fade away when routes become less productive. Over time, these trail networks evolve to connect food sources with nest sites through the most efficient possible routes. But these aren't just static trail systems. They're dynamic networks that continuously adapt to changing conditions. When obstacles appear or resources shift, the ant colony's navigation network reconfigures itself automatically, finding new optimal routes through decentralized decision-making processes that involve thousands of individual ants, making simple choices about which trails to follow and reinforce. Schools of fish navigate using similar principles, with individual fish responding to local cues while contributing to collective navigation decisions that guide the entire school toward food sources or away from predators. Each fish is processing information about water currents, chemical gradients, and the movements of its neighbors, but the school as a whole exhibits navigation behaviors that are far more sophisticated than what any individual fish could accomplish. These collective navigation systems are teaching us profound lessons about how intelligence and problem-solving can emerge from the interactions between multiple simple agents. Instead of requiring centralized control or complex individual capabilities, these systems achieve sophisticated behaviors through distributed processing and local interactions. The implications for technology development are staggering. Engineers are using insights from swarm navigation to develop autonomous vehicle networks that can coordinate their movements without central control. Roboticists are creating multi-robot systems that can explore unknown environments using principles borrowed from ant colony navigation. And computer scientists are developing algorithms that can solve complex optimization problems by mimicking the collective decision-making processes observed in animal migrations. But beyond the technological applications, these discoveries are fundamentally changing how we think about intelligence and consciousness in the natural world. We're seeing that many of the most impressive navigation feats in the animal kingdom aren't accomplished by individual supernavigators, but by groups of relatively simple individuals working together in sophisticated ways. This challenges our human-centered view of intelligence as something that exists primarily within individual minds. Animals are showing us that intelligence can be distributed across networks, that problem-solving can emerge from collective processes, and that some of the most sophisticated cognitive capabilities in nature arise from cooperation and information sharing rather than individual brilliance. The migration of a caribou herd isn't just thousands of individual animals, each finding their own way across the landscape. It's a collective navigation system where the intelligence emerges from the interactions between all the participants. The knowledge of the group exceeds what any individual possesses, and the navigation decisions are made through distributed processes that tap into the collective experience and sensory capabilities of the entire herd. Similarly, a flock of migrating birds isn't just a collection of individual navigators traveling in the same direction. It's a collective intelligence system where information sharing and coordinated decision-making create navigation capabilities that surpass what any single bird could achieve alone. These insights are revolutionizing our understanding of how complex behaviors can emerge from relatively simple components. We're learning that intelligence in the natural world often operates more like a network than like isolated individual minds, with information and decision-making capabilities distributed across multiple participants working together toward common goals. And the more we study these systems, the more we realize that the boundaries between individual and collective intelligence are far more fluid than we previously understood. Animal navigation systems are showing us that intelligence and consciousness might be emergent properties that arise from interactions between multiple agents, rather than capabilities that exist solely within individual brains. This has profound implications for how we think about our own intelligence and the technologies we're developing. Instead of trying to create artificial intelligence systems that mimic human cognition, we might be better served by developing distributed intelligence networks that operate more like animal swarms or flocks. The animals we've been discussing are proof that there are many different ways to solve complex problems, and that some of the most effective approaches involve cooperation, information sharing, and collective decision-making rather than individual expertise or centralized control. But what's perhaps most remarkable about these social navigation systems is how they demonstrate the incredible interconnectedness of life on our planet. Animals aren't just using their individual abilities to navigate through the world. They're participating in vast information networks that span continents and connect millions of individuals across multiple species. The migration routes used by different species often overlap and interact in complex ways. Birds following one flyway might be influenced by the movements of other species using the same corridor. Marine animals might be responding to chemical cues left behind by previous migrants, even from different species entirely. There's growing evidence that the Earth's major migration corridors function like biological superhighways, with multiple species sharing information and resources along common routes. These corridors have been shaped by millions of years of use, creating optimized pathways that maximize survival and minimize energy expenditure for the countless animals that depend on them. But these ancient migration networks are now facing unprecedented challenges from human activities. Climate change is shifting the timing and availability of resources along traditional routes. Urban development is fragmenting migration corridors and creating obstacles that didn't exist when these systems first evolved. Light pollution and electromagnetic interference are disrupting the environmental cues that animals rely on for navigation. The social nature of animal navigation systems makes them particularly vulnerable to these disruptions. When traditional routes become unusable or dangerous, it's not just individual animals that are affected. Entire cultural traditions of navigation knowledge can be lost, sometimes within just a single generation. We've seen this happen with several species where human activities have disrupted traditional migration patterns. When the social learning systems that maintain navigation knowledge are broken, it can take many generations to re-establish those traditions, if they can be re-established at all. This is why conservation efforts increasingly focus not just on protecting individual animals, but on preserving the migration corridors and social structures that maintain navigation traditions. Scientists are working to identify and protect critical stopover sites, reduce human-caused disruptions to migration routes, and even restore traditional pathways that have been lost to development or environmental change. These efforts recognize that animal navigation isn't just about individual abilities, but about maintaining the complex social and environmental systems that support successful migration. Protecting these systems requires understanding not just how animals navigate, but how they learn navigation skills from each other and pass that knowledge down through generations. The study of social navigation systems is revealing that the natural world is far more interconnected and interdependent than we previously understood. Animals aren't just individual agents moving through the landscape. They're participants in vast networks of information sharing and collective decision-making that span the globe and connect species across continents and oceans. These discoveries are changing how we think about conservation, ecosystem management, and our own relationship with the natural world. We're learning that protecting animal migration requires preserving not just individual species or specific habitats, but entire networks of relationships and information flows that support navigation across multiple scales of space and time. And as we continue to study these systems, we're discovering that the social aspects of animal navigation are often the most sophisticated and impressive components of their abilities. The individual sensory capabilities and information processing skills we discussed earlier are remarkable enough, but when combined with social learning and collective decision-making, they create navigation systems of breathtaking complexity and effectiveness. The animals navigating around us every day aren't just using their own capabilities to find their way through the world. They're participating in ancient traditions of knowledge sharing that connect them to their ancestors, their contemporaries, and the generations that will follow them. They're part of navigation networks that have been operating continuously for millions of years, constantly adapting and evolving in response to changing conditions while maintaining the essential knowledge needed for survival. These social navigation systems represent some of the most sophisticated examples of collective intelligence in the natural world. They demonstrate that the most impressive capabilities often emerge not from individual brilliance, but from cooperation, communication, and the accumulated wisdom of communities working together toward common goals. And they remind us that intelligence and problem solving in the natural world operate on principles that are often very different from our human-centered assumptions about how minds work. The animals around us are showing us that there are many ways to be intelligent, many ways to solve complex problems, and many ways to navigate successfully through an ever-changing world. The secrets of how animals navigate without maps aren't just revealing the hidden capabilities of individual species. They're unveiling vast networks of intelligence and information sharing that connect life across our planet in ways we're only beginning to understand and appreciate. And as we come to the end of this incredible journey through the hidden world of animal navigation, I want you to take a moment to think about what this all means. We've traveled alongside Arctic terns crossing polar ice caps, followed sea turtles through endless blue oceans, and watched in amazement as tiny butterflies somehow know exactly where their great-great-grandparents were heading. We've discovered magnetic compasses built into living cells, quantum navigation systems that let birds see invisible field lines, and social networks that preserve navigation knowledge across centuries. But here's what I find most profound about all of this. Every single day, right outside your window, these miraculous navigation systems are operating in ways that would make our most advanced GPS satellites look like children's toys. That robin hopping across your lawn isn't just randomly searching for worms. It's using a sophisticated spatial memory system that maps every food source, territorial boundary, and escape route in its neighborhood, with precision that would impress a military strategist. The dog walking down your street isn't wandering aimlessly. It's reading a chemical information network that tells it about every other animal that has passed through the area in recent days, creating a real-time map of social activity that's invisible to your senses but crystal clear to its remarkable nose. Even the ants marching across your sidewalk are using navigation technologies that put our traffic management systems to shame. They're constantly optimizing their routes, sharing information about resource locations, and adapting to obstacles using distributed intelligence networks that would make Google's algorithms weep with envy. Think about that for a moment. We live surrounded by navigation technologies so advanced that we've only recently begun to understand they even exist. Every migration season, millions of animals are embarking on journeys that represent some of the most remarkable feats of navigation, endurance, and intelligence on our planet. And they're doing it using biological systems that are self-maintaining, energy efficient, and more precise than anything humans have ever engineered. These animals are proof that intelligence comes in forms we're only beginning to appreciate, that consciousness might be far more widespread in the natural world than we ever imagined, and that our planet is crisscrossed with information networks and navigation highways that have been operating successfully for millions of years. But perhaps most importantly, they're reminding us that we share our world with creatures whose capabilities far exceed what we typically give them credit for. Every time we discover a new navigation ability or sensory capability in animals, it reveals another layer of sophistication in the natural world that was hiding in plain sight. The story of animal navigation isn't just about how creatures find their way from place to place. It's about biological technologies that challenge our understanding of what's possible, social networks that preserve knowledge across generations, and intelligence systems that emerge from cooperation and information sharing rather than individual brilliance. These discoveries are inspiring new technologies that could revolutionize human navigation, teaching us profound lessons about collective intelligence and distributed problem-solving, and revealing that our planet is far more interconnected and sophisticated than we ever dared to imagine. The animals around us aren't just surviving in the natural world, they're thriving using navigation systems that represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement. They're living proof that there are many different ways to solve complex problems, many forms of intelligence we haven't fully explored, and many secrets still waiting to be discovered in the remarkable creatures we share our planet with. And here's what gives me the most hope. Every new discovery in animal navigation research opens doors to possibilities we never knew existed. We're developing bio-inspired technologies that could change how we explore space, creating artificial intelligence systems based on swarm navigation principles, and learning to protect the ancient migration corridors that support these incredible journeys. The more we understand about how animals navigate without maps, the more we realize that we're surrounded by natural technologies that could help us solve some of our most challenging problems. From traffic optimization to environmental monitoring, from robotics to artificial intelligence, the principles that govern animal navigation are inspiring innovations that could benefit both human society and the natural world. But beyond all the technological applications and scientific insights, studying animal navigation has taught me something even more valuable. It's shown me that the world is far more magical and mysterious than I ever imagined. Every time I see a bird flying overhead now, I'm amazed by the biological technologies it's carrying. Every time I notice butterflies in a garden, I'm reminded of the incredible journeys their ancestors completed using navigation systems we're still trying to understand. The animals we encounter every day aren't just going through the motions of survival. They're demonstrating capabilities that represent some of the most sophisticated achievements in natural engineering. They're using sensory abilities that exceed our best technology, processing information in ways that challenge our understanding of intelligence, and accomplishing feats of navigation that continue to inspire and amaze researchers around the world. So the next time you're walking outside and you see animals around you, remember that you're witnessing the operation of navigation technologies that put our smartphones to shame. You're observing intelligence systems that have been refined over millions of years. You're seeing living proof that our planet is filled with capabilities and connections that are far more sophisticated than most of us ever realize. The secrets of how animals navigate without maps aren't just fascinating scientific discoveries. They're reminders that we live in a world of endless wonder, surrounded by creatures whose abilities exceed our wildest imagination, participating in natural networks that connect life across continents and oceans in ways that are both humbling and inspiring. These animals have been keeping their navigation secrets for millions of years, and we've barely scratched the surface of understanding what they're truly capable of accomplishing. Every migration season brings new discoveries. Every research study reveals new layers of complexity, and every technological breakthrough inspired by animal navigation opens new possibilities for both scientific understanding and practical applications. The journey to understand how animals navigate without maps is far from over. In fact, we may be entering the most exciting period of discovery in this field, as new technologies and research methods allow us to study these systems in ways that were impossible just a few years ago. Who knows what incredible navigation abilities we'll discover next? What other sensory capabilities are animals using that we haven't even detected yet? What other forms of intelligence and problem-solving are operating all around us, just waiting for us to develop the tools and understanding needed to recognize them? The animals navigating our world without maps aren't just remarkable for what they can do. They're remarkable for what they're teaching us about the possibilities that exist when intelligence, evolution, and millions of years of refinement come together to solve the complex challenges of survival on a dynamic, ever-changing planet. And that, to me, is the most amazing discovery of all, that we live surrounded by proof that intelligence, creativity, and technological sophistication come in forms we're only beginning to understand and appreciate. The natural world is filled with navigation systems that exceed our best engineering, information networks that surpass our communication technologies, and collective intelligence systems that put our artificial intelligence to shame. The animals around us are living reminders that our planet is far more sophisticated, interconnected, and remarkable than we ever dared to imagine. And every day, they're demonstrating navigation abilities that continue to inspire, amaze, and humble those of us lucky enough to witness their incredible journeys. The secrets of animal navigation are finally being revealed, and they're showing us a world of possibilities we never knew existed.